Good morning. My name is Jeff Spees. I'm the Senior Director of Policy for Quick Mount PV, and for the next hour, we will be discussing solar roofing best practices for tile roofs. And the roof in the image on screen is my tile roof in Chandler, Arizona, utilizing the Quick Mount PV Quick Hook. And those are some LG modules. And the fella in the photo is our tech support rep, Carlos Maldonado, who does a great job in handling all of the technical questions that come in on the front line. And occasionally he'll contact me or Johan Elfson, our director of training, or Sue Stark, our East Coast training manager, for a little more technical guidance where necessary. So we will go ahead and cover the following topics. We will be addressing the benefits of quality waterproofing, doing a brief commentary on common problems, and also a brief mention of roofing code standards and best practices. More importantly, we will be addressing in a 1.5-hour webinar this afternoon the topic of roofing codes and standards for solar installation. Finally, we'll be focusing most of today's discussion on the installation of our roof attachment mounts and waterproofing for the life of the system. Quick Mount PV is a manufacturer of flash roof attachments that fit just about every roof type, with the exception of standing seam and through fastened metal panel roofs. For those products, we typically refer our customers to our good friends at S5. Otherwise, we offer products for asphalt shingle roofs, shake, slate, metal shingle tile roofs, which we'll be discussing today, and low slope roofs. Our most recently introduced tile products include the tile replacement mount, which I feel is my #1 choice today because it gives you a very strong, robust standoff post that can slide side to side to match up with the hole in the replacement metal flashing. So every one you install yields a matching tile from the roof that you remove set to the side to use as replacement tiles for any broken ones during the installation. It fits SW and flat tile. We've just made in recent months that same concept available for our tile hook, or any tile hook for that matter. This is our tile replacement flashing, and the benefit of this, of course, again, is that whenever you install a hook, you install this flashing over the hook. You just will take your tin snips and snip a little section, bend it over wherever the hook comes out, and it will yield an unbroken, unmatching, hopefully unbroken, matching tile for the roof to use for service parts. And you can see again, flat S and W are the standard shapes. It fits the broad majority of concrete tiles that are flat S and W shape. Our conduit penetration flashing is very utilitarian, fits flat and curved tile, and has a base flashing and a tile level flashing with collars. We'll talk about that, as well as our conduit mount, which does not require any removal of the tile. You just slip the hook on the upper and lower portion of the tile, attach the bolt, and then attach your conduit. Really convenient. Our L mount is our newest product for asphalt shingle roofs, a very cost-effective way to install flash roof attachments for asphalt shingles. It's also lower profile, sits closer to the roof, and it's got some neat features that we cover in our shingle webinar that you can check out on our website. All of our 9x12 flashings have been modified to rounded corners, as you see from the image here on our conduit mount, as well as having those alignment guide notches, which speeds up installation. And we also have available now our new Q box, which allows you to bring your PV cables into the roof through an elevated water seal inside that box in a very cost-effective way. Our #1 product for asphalt shingles is our E-mount, which has that nice rectangular block to get a bit more elevation off the roof, and our quick rack rail-free system for asphalt shingles. You can learn more about at our website. While there, you might check out our universal accessory frame bracket, which is a convenient way to attach a maximizer or a microinverter to the back of a PV module in a bracket that is listed to UL 2703 for bonding and grounding. You can get all of these products by clicking the green free sample button on our website. I would also encourage you check out our new podcast series titled Solar Roof Talk, that's hosted by myself and my coworker, Sue Stark, where we address topics of general interest to rooftop solar installers. Our most recent presentation, which we did a couple weeks ago and posted to the website, talks about the new relaxed setbacks and pathways that have been implemented in the International Fire Code, the Building Code, the Residential Code, and check that out if you want more information by Googling the search term Solar Roof Talk and it's available on SoundCloud and iTunes podcasts. We do also have our mobile training center. If you're interested in having this come to your place of business, just get in touch with our sales folks and they can try to get you on the circuit that we're running from East Coast to West Coast. My name's Jeff Spies. I'm the Senior Director of Policy for Quick Mount PV. I also serve as Secretary for the Industry Certification Group known as NABCEP, the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners. I serve also on the board of CalSIA, the California Solar Energy Industry Association, where I chair the Committee on Codes and Standards, and I serve on the UL 2703 Standard Technical Panel, which is the standard that pertains to rack-mounted PV systems, including the incredibly frequently discussed and important topic of how to properly bond your racking system and the module frames to ground in a long-term reliable fashion. My degree is mechanical engineering, but for 30 years I've been training folks like yourself in a broad range of electrical and mechanical technologies over the past 11 years now in the solar industry, where I've organized several of the largest technical training conferences. Thousands have attended my webinars and in-person trainings, and I do a lot of speaking at industry events and writing for industry trade publications. But at heart, I'm a technology geek, love solar, and it's fortunate that I picked a career in a field that's also a strong hobby of mine. In fact, really pleased that when my own home system was featured in the inside back cover of Solar Pro magazine a few years ago, because we had done some interesting things to adapt the PV system to my tile roof. You see pictured in the right hand image there, as well as I was on the first wave of a new type of inverter at that time that had what's called a secure power supply. So when the grid goes down, I flip a switch and I can still get 12 amps of power out of that switched outlet as long as the sun's shining, which is a pretty cool feature. But what I'm most excited about was for the past 2.5 years, I was involved in the production of a documentary film titled Solar Roots that told the story of the start of the PV industry, where we traveled the country interviewing the luminaries of the industry, folks like Richard Perez, founder of Home Power Magazine, who sadly passed away at his homestead in Southern Oregon about a year ago. But thankfully, we were able to interview Richard and get his story and his words. That's in a wonderful story that starts with the early photovoltaic discoveries in the 1800s to the development of the silicon solar cell in the 1950s at Bell Labs, the rapid deployment in the space program in the 60s, and really focusing our time and attention on that colorful group of characters that brought this PV technology down from space into homes around the world, folks like David Katz with Alternative Energy Engineering, and we interviewed 50 plus pioneers of the industry, the veritable who's who of who started the PV industry back in the very late 70s and the 1980s. And it's a really entertaining film. Hope some of you can see it at an upcoming industry event. You will receive 1 NABCEP credit for the training, and it will be emailed to you within 1 to 2 weeks with the PDF showing that you have the credit, as well as links to download this presentation or view it as a recorded video. We are recording today's, and it's a helpful resource. If some of that information might have gone a bit fast, you can always refer back to the YouTube video that we have posted at our website, or you will get a link in 1 to 2 weeks with your NABCEP credit. Do check your spam filter. That's where the good stuff ends up. And after completing today's webinar, we certainly appreciate your feedback, and we do actually read it and take it to heart to always improve this training. So now I'll ask the question, why respect the roof? That is our tagline. And the reason that we feel it's important to respect the roof is because there's tremendous cost implications. Realize that I know for firsthand, I have many friends like Brian pictured on screen here who have PV systems that are over 35 years old. That one there is now 36 years old. And they're still producing very efficiently. But the question that I always ask is, will your flashed roof mounts and your roof last as long as the solar panels? And if you do it right, the answer is yes. Quality waterproofing in the end saves money for the system owner. Realize the cost to remove and reinstall an array is tremendous, 50 cents to $1.50 a watt. And that's for a 5 kilowatt system. Whereas when you buy the quality flash mounts, your cost could be as low as $250 for a quality flash mount. So it's really ridiculous to skimp, to trim pennies in such a critically important issue to the long-term cost of ownership. In the end, a quality flash mount installed properly is cheap insurance against the high costs of service down the road. It is challenging to seal a penetration in a roof for more than 10 years because you get the thermal expansion and contraction every day as the system heats up in the sun and cools off at night. The metal rack expands and contracts more than the wood roof, and wind contributes to that flexing of the mounts, which will really exercise the sealant. Realize that you have dozens of holes drilled in a typical roof to be able to mount a solar system. You don't need all of them to leak to have a leak. You only need 1 out of 50 or 60 or 80 holes that you might need in that roof, which is why quality flashings in the long run are imperative, because it becomes a statistical guessing game. Did you do it right 99.9% of the time? That's the statistic that you really want to achieve, and using a proper quality flashed mount installed in the correct manner really helps you ensure that 99 point some odd % reliability factor that's critical for long-term survivability of the PV system and a contractor business. This is such an important issue that in the inaugural issue of the industry's top trade publication, Solar Pro magazine, they had an article written by Rob Hernandez that stated, or a quote at least from a roofing consultant, Rob Hernandez, that stated that 80% of all lawsuits in the construction industry occur because of leaks. So this is a huge liability. Realize that the cost to remove and reinstall a PV array is 20 to 40% of the cost of a brand new system. And this price is becoming a higher, this service cost is becoming a higher price as PV systems have dropped from, $6 a watt a few years ago to $5 a watt ago to $3 a watt, which is the norm now in many states. Well, the cost to remove and reinstall doesn't drop. You're not seeing those reductions in the labor costs. As a result, the cost to remove and reinstall a PV array is getting to be a higher price of the cost of a brand new system. It's actually more expensive than replacing the inverter if you have to remove and reinstall the system. It's a huge cost that's unappreciated by the typical PV system owner and many installers. As the system ages in particular, what happens is interesting. The first time I ever disassembled a 13-year-old PV system, I started to appreciate how the PV cables, which were USE2 wiring, and earlier generation of modules, after a matter of years, the cable insulation starts to stiffen up where it no longer is nice and supple and bendable. It has now the consistency of cardboard. And the problem is that if you bend those cables too much, you can crack the insulation, setting which would cause more service calls, potentially shock and fire hazards. So realize that as the system ages, the cost of removing and reinstalling goes up because of things like wire damage, which is really likely. Grounding systems might have to be replaced. Racking damage is frequent in older systems. Wood rot and mold that initiated the need to remove the system in the first place will drive the prices even higher. So Quick Mount PV, we're the largest manufacturer of flashed roof attachments in the solar industry, with 25 plus years experience in metal fabrication, construction, solar installation, and manufacturing of the Quick Mount PV products since 2006. We are dedicated to quality code compliant waterproof solar installations. We are ISO 9001 certified, equally dedicated to the future of solar power and sustainability. And I feel privileged to work for a company that takes these issues seriously. So let's look now, and I'll just reiterate now that we're done with that brief introduction, that anybody that has questions, fire away on the question box. I'll keep an eye on that. And now I'll just do a quick summary overview of some common problems. Here's one of the big ones. There's no flashing at the underlayment level with this threaded stud sliding track device. This is not compliant with the Tile Roofing Institute requirements for flashing at the underlayment level. Oftentimes we'll see these kinds of threaded studs that they just drill a hole through the tile and use this little 1-inch diameter metal disc to try to seal, and that's just not practical. It does not meet at all the flashing requirements that we'll describe in the official flashing instructions for the Tile Roofing Institute. Similarly, this type of inexpensive bent metal hook, which is very weak and often impacts the tile in wind events, this is often unflashed at the underlayment level. This is not a permissible approach by any way, shape, or form. Here we've got a real host of problems where we've got a PV array installed where the rails are not even bolted in the acceptable clamping zone on the module, you've got more than half the module hanging over the ridge in a hurricane zone. This is from Florida, from the Miami-Dade area. So this is a serious problem, not to mention that the PV cables are strewn across the roof. There's no proper wire management. There's no flashing installed. It's a nightmare system that was horribly designed and installed, and this installer ought to have to go back to school before they will issue him another permit. Here's another job where somebody did not replace the tile, and I can assure you these kinds of patchwork repairs are of limited value long term. I've tried doing the adhesive on tile corners that break off, and they inevitably break again. So the only viable option when a tile cracks is to replace it, unfortunately, which is where our tile replacement flashings become really handy. If you miss the rafter, well, now your bolt, as the system's heating up and cooling off in the morning and evening, it's going to wobble back and forth, increasing the potential for leaks if you aren't solidly into a rafter. And you can see we've got that problem in this image. If the leak problems progress, you start to get to wood rot, which is denoted by the lighter colored sections of the wood there. In fact, that pen is being pushed right through the sheathing on the roof, which is rotted clean through, where the shingles on top of this one were able to be lifted up. Obviously on a tile roof, this is what it looks like. And in fact, this is exactly what my tile roof on my home looked like before I re-roofed, where we had some leak problems that were causing mold. You can see the mold clearly evident there, the rot that's going on, and these can be expensive problems to repair for sure. Obviously, the drywall damage would be $500 to $1,000 or more in repair costs. Mold damage can go easily into the tens of thousands of dollars, so don't underestimate the problems. One other quick comment I'll make before we really get into the detailed installation information is you'll frequently see tile roofs that are constructed with hip trusses. So you look at the home pictured in the lower right there. That's a typical hip roof construction. That maybe typical is the wrong word, because more often than not, they're not as simple as this, but that's a basic hip that you're looking at. The problem is that the trusses that will be at toward the peak of that hip roof plane they don't line up with the decking. And what I'm saying is you got a Fink truss that comprises the trusses that go to the highest elevation. Then these special hip trusses are the ones that you have to be careful of. The monopitch trusses are oriented perpendicularly to the hip trusses. Those ones are easy to install in because the decking is bolted right down solid to the monopitch truss. The hip truss areas, though, are a little bit trickier. So if you've got a PV array where you've got several modules in landscape, as you see here, note that those two top attachment points are going to be on a hip truss. And the problem is that the deck does not line up with the hip truss. It's, as you can see from this cross-sectional diagram here, the deck is at an angle to the hip truss. As a result, you can't just go ahead and screw right down into that truss top cord. It's irresponsible to do so. The more appropriate, compliant approach for attaching in a hip truss area is to use wood blocking mounted between the two hip trusses to give you a surface that's square that you can put your flashing and lag screw directly into the wood block, which in essence forms a solid structural attachment mechanism. So that was one thing I want to point out to anybody that might be working on any hip roof sections. We see a lot of folks, and I'll just go back real quick. Sadly, I think a lot of installers don't necessarily appreciate the complexity of what they're doing, but if you attach, like you see here with your lag screw, you're not going to be solidly structurally connected to that truss top cord. There is an argument that could be made if you could hit the corner of that truss top cord exactly accurately. The problem is that you violate edge distance requirements from the national design specifications that are published by the American Wood Council. As a result, installing a fastener into a truss top cord in the location that's shown here would violate building code. That's the problem. So that's why installing that wood blocking is important to be code compliant. All right, so now I'll just take a quick look at the box. No questions yet, so we will launch into the how-tos, and here's a little checklist. I won't go through in detail, just to state that the information you should know is original roofer of record what kind of tile you have and underlayment, what kind of roof warranties apply. I think that manufacturer-backed warranties are always preferable, but those don't exist much in the tile realm. Construction details, such as what kind of sheathing is used. Is it plywood? Is it half-inch OSB, or usually it's nominally less than half-inch? What kind of underlayment you have. Is it synthetic? Is it 30-pound felt? Is it a 90-pound rolled roofing underlayment like I used on my roof? Do you have wood battens, or maybe some other kind of special drain-through batten, or an elevated batten, or does it have no battens at all, or battenless? Rafter size and spacing, the roof condition and construction, any evidence of leaks. That's where the attic inspection is critically beneficial to understanding if you got pre-existing issues. Condition of your underlayment, is it curled, which is the dead giveaway to underlayment that is questionable for getting solar installation. You always want to check your underlayment at the eve for a quick guesstimate. That's easy to do. Now, I've assisted in writing an article, or this was my tile roof first in Solar Pro magazine, where we did discuss a little bit of the roofing work that was done. More importantly, we had a couple articles myself and that were authored by myself or my coworker Johan Elfsen. There's one in January 2011, Solar Pro, talking about the tile roof attachment systems available. It was 7 years ago. We did an update article in 2013 that helped highlight some of the newer developments like tile hooks, and we're probably due to do another article update as we've seen things like these replacement tile mounts and flashings come into the market. So that what we'll talk about now are the three different approaches that you as an installer have available to tackle tile roof installations with our product offering. The three are on screen: a tile replacement mount, which is my preferred approach whenever possible. The tile hook, which is what I used on my roof. That was prior to us having the tile replacement mount. I really love it. I'm happy, super happy with the tile hook, but the tile replacement mount, just you'll see in a moment some of the nice features of it. And finally, for those roofs where either of the two other products don't fit well, and those exist because there's a great diversity in tile types out there, for those that are a little more custom, we also have something called the universal tile mount, which works with just about every concrete or clay tile, flat or curved, because it uses a very malleable aluminum flashing that can contour to most of the tile types that are used out there. Now, the first thing I always like to look at is forensics. You are the detective. You have to look at the roof to determine if the existing underlayment is in good enough condition to get a PV installation. Realize, depending on where you're at and the quality of the underlayment, the typical life will range from 15 years, which is common. That was the point at which my underlayment went bad in my Chandler, Arizona home. You can, with higher caliber roofing work, get more than 30 years of life out of underlayment. And purportedly, the newer generation of synthetics, and not all synthetic underlayments are created equal, some are of very dubious quality. There's serious problems that are already existing with many of the plastic or synthetic underlayments. But if you do a quality synthetic underlayment installed by a competent contractor, that's increasingly important with synthetics. There is potential that underlayment could go 50 years, maybe more. So that said, the most common underlayments we see include the felt underlayment, which is nothing more than a piece of paper that has asphalt impregnated into the paper. Then the most common that we see used here in the Phoenix area, and the minimum requirement by the Tile Roofing Institute, is that you have 30-pound felt underlayment that's overlapped with each course by a few inches. The higher quality homes often use double lapped 40-pound underlayment, where no matter where you're at on the roof, you'll have 2, sometimes 3 layers of 40-pound underlayment between the upper surface and the deck. And finally, another common felt underlayment is a 90-pound mineral surface rolled roofing material. That's what I used on my roof. That's the center image that you see on screen. One of the nice aspects is that if that mineral surface rolled roofing is exposed to the uh, as how home is being constructed, it won't degrade as quick as asphalt impregnated felt paper. So oftentimes you'll see the felt underlayment roofs as they're being installed stand exposed to the weather for 2, 3, sometimes 4 months, and that certainly can wear that underlayment out prematurely. This is where the mineral surface rolled roofing is a preferred underlayment whenever there's expanded exposure of that roof. That said, the mineral surface rolled roofing, of course, is just a much thicker. It's 90 pounds and is a really robust underlayment. I feel comfortable has the capability here in Chandler, Arizona, where I installed it, to give me 30 plus years of service life. Finally, synthetic underlayments, as you see pictured in the lower image there, that's a GAF underlayment. Oftentimes these are fully adhered to the deck underneath, and these can be incredibly quality underlayments that can give extraordinarily long life. They are more persnickety to install. You have to be more careful. And the fact of the matter is some of the synthetics that exist out there are nothing more than glorified home wrap material and have shown to be problematic in leaks with nails that go through them over time, opening up holes because of the expansion contraction of the plastic sheeting on the wood roof starts to open up a hole that leaks can develop. So that's been a growing problem. Be sensitive if you see synthetics to verify what kind it is and do some research. There's a great report that exists by the Western Roofing Contractor Association, WRSCA, and they published this report about 1.5 years ago that highlighted several of the synthetic underlayments that are experiencing serious problems. Now, my tile roof, shown here in Chandler, Arizona, had some serious problems that I'll show you. First and foremost, this is my west-facing roof after we removed the tile. Notice the staining of the wood battens. Now, not necessarily a major concern, but you can see the underlayment by the eave of the roof there is dry, brittle, curling up, and you can see where water was ponding, in part because of the very poor eave riser designs that were used prior to 2006, when the requirements for proper eave rise metal came into place, and that is a much more practical option. But either way, this roof was in pretty crummy condition. You can even see that the wood batten kind of in the center left of the image has broken off because it's kind of rotted. So this roof was definitely of an advanced age, so much so that one of the roofers, as they were getting on the roof, put his foot right through one of the weak sections in the sheathing that had some rot going on. So this gives you a little better image of what was happening. This is the mold growing under my underlayment in Phoenix, Arizona. So when people say, oh, gee, you live in Phoenix, you don't have to worry much about leaks, I say, ha ha, that's not true. Unfortunately, we have to worry about leaks in a place like Arizona, because while we only get a bit of rain here and there, when it comes, often it comes very hard and heavy, and that can grow into mold, as you can clearly see from my underlayment. More worrisome is the advanced state of deterioration of my felt underlayment. Look how dry and cracked it is toward the top of the image. That was right at the eave, showing that the sun had literally baked the asphalt out. It was nothing more than crumbly paper, and leaks happen at that point. This is 16-year-old underlayment, folks. And this is the underlayment on my southeast facing roof, which had not yet started to leak. But look at the amount of curl on the downhill edge of that underlayment. It was curled about 1.5 inches, maybe more, off the deck below it. So this is an advanced state of deterioration, 16-year-old, 30-pound single lap felt underlayment in the Phoenix area, which was by 20 years, there's no doubt in my mind that this would have deteriorated similar to the other image you saw on my southwest facing roof. Now, there are 3 common types of tile that are used out there: concrete, clay, and sand cast clay. Concrete is the most common. It's the least expensive. Its color does fade over time, which makes it challenging when you're trying to match color of tile. You just generally can't match color, because even if you have a piece of the original tile and it was stored in a shady area, the stuff that's been exposed to the sun will have color shifted over the years. But it's the most durable as a general class, minimal breakage from foot traffic, but there are certain classes of lightweight concrete tile that are more prone to cracking when you walk on them. So be sensitive to that reality. The way in which you can tell a concrete tile, the dead giveaway, is that really thick lug right as you're looking at the underside of the tile and the front edge there, you see how there's that thick lug? It's about, 3/4 of an inch thick or so. That is the dead giveaway. That's a concrete tile. It also has that porous appearance, realizing that concrete, while it certainly will shed water, is a porous material and absorbs it. So if you take a concrete tile that's been in the rain for a while, well, that concrete tile is going to be wet on the underside, not dripping wet per se, but concrete is porous, and that's how you can tell it's concrete. Clay, on the other hand, is not porous at all. So that's one of the major differentiators. Clay tile usually is very thin. You can see several different styles pictured on screen, but the roof at the top, the image at the top there of the finished clay tile roof, they're beautiful. That's their major selling point, is that they are more artistically attractive than a concrete tile roof, and you don't have that porous appearance of the tile itself. You can do some creative things where your side-to-side distance of these particular S-shaped tiles in the upper image can be closer together or further apart to allow you to manage around architectural curves in the roof. So there's a lot of versatility that makes it complicated for solar installation. They also are color fast for 100 years, but expensive, noticeably more so than concrete. And as a rule, although there are some high quality clay tile that interlock very cleanly and are super robust, they tend to, as a rule, especially for the types shown here, be more prone to breakage when you walk on them. So if you get into these kind of clay tile roofs, just be sensitive. They're more expensive, and any damage will be more expensive to repair than a concrete tile roof. The sandcast clay old world tile, usually in the cap and pan arrangement, oftentimes mortared in place like you see in these images. They look really cool. They're very common down in San Diego, for example. They're super difficult to work on. They break really easily. The best strategy typically with this tile is remove it all, put down a new asphalt shingle roof, install your PV array over that, and then tile around the perimeter of the array to get an inset or picture framed look in a process known as strip and go. So this, to me, it's a beautiful tile, but the fundamental reality is that sandcast clay is not a very practical tile to install PV on directly. Usually remove the tile in the area of the array. Now, there are several different tile attachment methods. Batten is the most common, tends to be practiced everywhere except Southern California, where all the tiles get mounted to usually a 1x2 wood batten that the tiles then get nailed down into. That is the preferred approach by the Tile Roofing Institute. Occasionally you'll find the drain through battens. That's what I used. My roof is pictured in the upper right there, where I used a true flow batten from Boral that has these wide drainage channels that allows water to efficiently run down the roof and dry that underlayment out, which preserves the life of the underlayment. You also have the possibility of using these scallop cut battens. I don't quite like them so much for a number of reasons. They're kind of flimsy. They break easily because that scallop cut means that the wood section's pretty thin, right where the scallop cut is. But they're a functional type of batten, and the benefit is they're the same dimensions as a standard 1x2 wood batten, and they do allow water to drain more quickly. Elevated battens are neat. They have these about 3/8 inch thick plastic discs that space the wood batten up off the roof surface. The only concern I would communicate is that it will interfere with your ability to use a tile hook easily, because they will space all your tile another 1/4 or 3/8 inch higher off the roof surface, and for tile hooks that can be problematic. Now, counter batten is not used as frequently, but it's a great solution for very wet climates. The basic premise is you have battens that run uphill and downhill on the roof, and then you have a cross series of horizontal battens that the tiles attach to, and this allows, again, water that blows up between the tile to quickly drain down the roof, which is why it is a preferred tile mounting option in really wet climates where you have a tile roof. Direct attach, which is the norm in San Diego and LA metropolitan areas, in through Riverside County, San Bernardino, all those areas tend to use an approach where each and every tile is nailed directly to the roof deck. This is not a preferred method by the Tile Roofing Institute, but there are ways that you can install on direct attach tile that aren't overly complicated. I'll show you some nice hardware. Occasionally, particularly in Florida, you're going to find fully adhered tile where you might have all the tiles concrete mortared down to the underlayment, or in more recent years, a foam adhesive that gets squirted down onto the underlayment and the tile gets set into it where it's glued in place. These are complex because now you have to break the tile out usually. Sometimes you can remove the tile without breaking it, and then you have to kind of get that adhesive or mortar out of the way, put your mount down, underlayment, flash it, and so on and so forth. So these are more complex and would be common in Hawaii to a certain degree, much more so common in Florida. Now, this is my rotten sheathing that's being replaced before the solar installation. This is where I had some leaks going through, rotting out the sheathing. Thankfully, the rafters were okay, but the fascia on the eave area was pretty rotted. We replaced that, and the stub ends of the rafters were still okay. But I will point out that the Tile Roofing Institute is the legitimate set of installation instructions that one is mandated to use to properly follow the code requirements for waterproofing on tile roofs. And the Tile Roofing Institute, TRI as we call it, guidelines show how the flashing must be installed. And they require that you flash at the tile level, and if it's a curved tile, that you use a malleable metal flashing. And the reason that we want to flash at the underlayment level is because water blows between the tile. This is my northwest facing roof, which shows clear evidence over the 16 years before we re-roofed of water tracking downhill. This image is me standing on the ridge looking downhill. And you can see that water was flowing between the battens. Every time it rained, water would blow up between the tile. That's the reason why we must flash at the deck level where the underlayment is, either using the bibbing approach that's outlined in the diagram on screen, where you have a metal flashing installed at the deck level over the underlayment, and then you have a piece of underlayment bibbing that surrounds the flashing to at least the halfway point, just as is pictured. And then the paragraph on the right states that you have to either bib it, or you can do a 3-course sealing using asphaltic roof cement and reinforcing fabric. So I'm going to show you the different methods that are approved and other methods that are not approved to better explain the importance of waterproofing at the underlayment level. And we'll start with bibbing. This is the traditional approach in bibbing. Now, it's not used often with batten style roofs because, as you can see here, you have to kind of pry up the batten, which is another step that many installers prefer to avoid. So they tend to use 3-course sealing, which I'll show in a minute. But that said, if you do bib, which is very straightforward on a direct attached tile roof where you do not have wood battens or any battens, you can use an extra piece of underlayment. Here we're showing a piece of 30-pound felt underlayment that would then surround the flashing to have the bib and the flashing act as a reliable combination approach to preventing water from being able to access the penetrations that are housed under that deck level flashing picture. Alternatively, you can do what's called 3-coursing, where you get some mastic or roofing cement, as it's interchangeably referred to, and you take our 9x9 metal flashing, put it down over your standoff, nail the upper 2 corners only, put down a nice coating of the black mastic into which you press several pieces of reinforcing mesh, and then you finish off with another coating of mastic. That will dry to a very leathery, robust, long-lived seal, assuming you use a quality mastic. I like to use the mastics that have rubberizing agents that give them better life than those that are just made of a roofing cement, an asphaltic roofing cement. The rubberizing agents give it more elasticity over the decades, and if you get the high quality stuff, it can sometimes even be exposed to UV. But under the tile with rubberizing agents, you should get, when done properly, a good 30-year life expectancy of a quality adhered 3-course seal. Flexible flashing, while convenient and clean, because you just have a backing material that you peel off a flexible piece of self-adhering underlayment, it is not approved for use on any kind of felt paper. It's not approved for use by the TRI. It's not approved for use on granulated mineral coated rolled roofing like I've used, and it is approved if you have a synthetic underlayment. So if you're using a quality synthetic underlayment like that GAF material, the proper flashing would be another piece of self-adhering underlayment that's of the same material, because the adhesive is compatible with that particular synthetic underlayment. So the reliability of flexible flashing has been questioned. I've had bad experiences with it adhering to asphaltic materials for very long. Sometimes it separates immediately. Sometimes it separates over the course of a year or two. But my personal experience has been problematic, and I would strongly discourage anybody consider using flexible flashing as your deck level sealing if you have felt paper underlayment or mineral surface rolled roofing material. If you have synthetic underlayment, then flexible flashing that's compatible with that synthetic underlayment would likely be the appropriate material to use. Sealant-only solutions like the ones pictured on screen are absolutely not approved and are very unreliable. Waterproofing will cause problems over time. So this chart just explains that bibbing and 3-coursing are approved by the Tile Roofing Institute and are excellent, when done properly, excellent long-term waterproofing. Flexible flashing has uncertain performance because it works only for synthetics, but the synthetic underlayments are going through some re-evaluation by the roofing industry because of the problems that have been reported with certain synthetic materials that have been used. And finally, sealant-only solutions are poor waterproofing. I'll also add that in our evaluation, we've been looking at some flexible flashings for years. We've tested some, and we've had some that separate. They lose their adhesion within 1 day of 4 hours, and they've already separated from new felt paper. If the felt paper is older, they may adhere more quickly, but realize to get flexible flashing to adhere properly, whether it's to new or old underlayment, requires a thorough cleaning, which is easier with new underlayment, but also a priming. And the priming will remove some of those oils for the underlayment to allow the adhesive in the peel and stick to stick. When we've done those tests, we've come away unimpressed that it will last more than 10 years of reliable sealing. And that's the reason why we strongly recommend anybody think twice about using a flexible flashing as the deck level sealant. So now I'll show the different products, starting with the tile replacement mount, which, as mentioned, S-shape and flat tiles. It works for the broad majority of concrete tiles, where over 90% of concrete tiles would be able to use one of these 3 sizes. There's a particular tile that's no longer made that was common enough here in the Phoenix area. They went out of business they left here about 10 years ago. And it's a little bit wider, but we're working on trying to adapt the S-tile to work with a little bit wider flashings. Otherwise, it works on a broad variety of tile types. This is our S-shaped tile flashing. Note that the post will slide side to side in the base, which is integrated into the flashing and utilizes our clever elevated water seal flute that we use in many of our other flashing products. So you're elevating that vulnerable water intrusion area, looks like here, I think it's about 3/4 of an inch off the flashing plate, which will be bibbed or 3-course to the underlayment. And then you've got the post that will line up with the hole in the replacement metal flashing. We make it for a W tile as well as a flat tile. And the procedure is pretty straightforward. You'll just measure from the butt edge of the tiles in the course that you're doing the installation on, measure up to the deck, mark your holes over the rafter, drill your holes with a 3/4, this is a 7/32 drill bit that's called an aircraft extension bit. So it's extra long to allow you to get a full depth hole in the rafter, which is important to meet the code requirements and not split the rafters. Then you'd install the base. Here we're just showing how this underlayment was double lapped, so we were able to remove one of the cut up into the underlayment that's there, and double lapped underlayment makes it really easy to install a flashing, but you might have to add a piece of bibbing where you'd pry up that batten. And then you'll get the underlayment cut out here in this double lapped underlayment configuration, slide the flashing up into place, secure it to the rafter with the two included lag screws and sealing washers, position the post so that it lines up where the hole in the flashing is, install the flashing with rubber collar, and you're done form fitting. You get a tile that matches the roof that you set aside for service, and on you go. Now, the tile hook is what I used on my roof, cost effective and attractive. That's really the major selling points, is that it's not terribly expensive, looks good, really nice. This is my home in Chandler, Arizona, with my southeast and southwest facing array, and Carlos Maldonado, our tech support rep, being our model for this image here. And the quick hook will slide side to side to position it in the best place in the tile for the specific type of tile that's used. We also have a side mount, which is pictured on screen right now, which utilizes the typical rails that are most often used. We also have a bottom mount version that would be usable with any strut style rail that has bolt holes that go through the bottom of the rail, the former being much more common today. So here's a nice cutaway drawing shown before we do any sealing of the flashing to the underlayment. And it's really fast, easy installation, good looking when all's said and done. Do be sensitive to the fact, as stated earlier, in Southern California, you find most tile roofs have each and every tile nailed directly to the roof deck in a battenless configuration. Most other tile areas like Vegas and Northern California, Arizona, and elsewhere in the country will use batten style installations. If you are using a direct attach battenless tile on the roof, like in San Diego or LA area or Riverside, you would need to use the lower hook because those tiles sit closer to the roof. So we make a standard height hook for batten style and a low height hook for any type of direct attach tile. And the importance of this is you want to make sure to have sufficient serviceability deflection clearance that's denoted here underneath the bottom of the quick hook, the knee of the hook. You never want that bottom of the hook to touch the tile underneath it. You can break the tile, and that's a problem with many of the inexpensive metal hooks out there that are, I guarantee today, rattling on tile roofs in a windstorm and breaking tile, causing serious liability problems for the installers that tried to save a few bucks. So this is a serious issue, folks, that I will strongly encourage you to consider very seriously, because it can be a big cost liability issue for the system owner and the contractor. Now, in this particular arrangement, we're showing use of a rafter finding tool called the Bosch DTEC 150 Deep Wall Scan tool, which will find the rafter, we'll drill our holes, mount our base plate, put the flashing down on the deck, nail up the upper two corners, and either bib it, as I've shown already in image number 6 there, or 3-course it in the upper right image with asphaltic roofing cement and reinforcing fabric. You then need to take a grinder, cut a pass through in the tile, although OSHA is starting to crack down on dry cutting, so this is becoming a harder thing to do where OSHA is enforcing these requirements. And then you have the tile hook sticking out between the tile. It looks good, there's no visible flashing. It's what I used on my roof, and I'm really happy with my installation. Here's Carlos, in fact, 3-course sealing a flashing on my roof with the quick hook. Just kind of giving folks a little bit of a sense for how easy it is to do this. And here he's putting the fiber reinforcing mesh, just kind of lining it up to cut it and press it into that wet asphaltic roofing cement, and covering that finally with another course of asphaltic roofing cement. So you end up with 3 courses where the mastic or roofing cement's the first layer, then the fiber mesh is the second layer, and then you finish off with another layer of mastic and put the tiles back into place. So you can cut usually with a grinder and diamond blade. Years back, people were using core drill bits to cut holes, but they're really expensive bits and it's kind of slow. So most people have gone back to cutting with a grinder or diamond blade. Here's a special kind of diamond blade called a tuck pointing blade that makes quick work out of removing the tile lugs when you're trying to grind that pass through in the WeatherGuard lug that we show pictured here. It's pretty straightforward. You'll just mark where your cut will be, although you'll get down to the point where you won't even have to mark it. Use that tuck pointing blade to quickly grind out the portion of that WeatherGuard lug. You can see in the lower left image we've shown where we've cut away the concrete lug to allow the tiles to fit back into place around the quick hook, and notice how much space we have underneath that quick hook. It's usually a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch, maybe more. That's desirable so that any flexing of the system won't ever allow the bottom of that hook to make contact with the top of the tile. I will reiterate, many of the cheap bent metal hooks that we see being used because they're cheap will literally rest on the tile or impact the tile in windstorms, and that's a serious liability that many contractors are electing to ignore. And I can assure you, you will not be able to ignore that forever, because eventually it will crack tile, increasing the water that then gets onto the deck and increasing the leak potential over time. So it's a serious liability, difficult to repair or replace this because you have to pull up your PV system. Here's the 3-coursing going on with Carlos demonstrating how our roofing bars can be used to prop up the tile uphill to make it a little easier to maneuver when you're under a tile roof. Occasionally you may need to double flash if the tile is, this particular tile was made by West Tile. It's a medium profile S tile, not very common, and as a result you don't have enough room to grind out the tile lug. So what we did is we just cut a square out of the corner of the tile and put a secondary piece of 19 thousandths malleable aluminum flashing over it for a code compliant, TRI compliant waterproofing approach. If you didn't cut out the corner of the tile, you'll see it just stuck up too far, and some installers who aren't paying attention to the proper methodology will do exactly what you see here and just leave the system, but that's not appropriate. You've got to make sure those tiles sit back down in place. So we, of course, cut out the corner of the tile, put this secondary flashing in place, and away you go. Here's the final installation showing the 19 thousandths flashing sandwiched between the other two pieces of tile there, and just to add a little bit of additional water resistance on the bottom row of mounts to prevent excessive wind-driven rain from blowing uphill under the hook, we used a bit of mastic under the hook to form a WeatherGuard barrier to replace the lug that was cut out. Here's the final image. It really looks good. There's no visible flashing. And the good news to report is we have now the replacement tile replacement flashings for our quick hook or any hook out there. And again, it's in flat S or W shapes. So whenever you install a tile hook with one of these, now you get a form-fitting metal flashing that replaces the existing tile that can be used to repair broken tiles elsewhere on the roof during the installation. And these are just a few beauty shots of my PV system on my roof in Chandler, Arizona, with Carlos doing some final adjusting of the clamps that are used in the racking system. There's no visible flashing, and it's really an attractive installation. Our final mount option is our standoff with double flashing. We call it the universal tile mount. We also have a slightly shorter post that's called the standard flat tile mount, but it's very versatile and works on the vast majority of clay or concrete tile. And here are the two post heights, either a 7-inch tall or 5.5-inch tall post, depending on how much space you want off the roof with your particular tile. And when you're done with the installation, it looks like you see here, where we've contoured the malleable aluminum tile level flashing to these S tile, and it looks good, and I think it is a very robust approach. In this particular set of images, what you're seeing here is a W-shaped tile with the universal tile mount, where the flashing again is contoured to the W tile, and you can see both the deck level flashing with bibbing and the tile level flashing. We do have the step-by-step installation procedure outlined in our installation instructions, where you'll bolt the standoff directly down to the deck, put your bibbing into place. In this case, we had to pry up the batten to slide the bibbing up into the course just uphill. And I will emphasize that whenever you pry up the wood batten, wherever you have a nail hole, make certain to put sealant back where that nail hole is. You might even opt to nail that batten down with an additional nail to make certain that it's well sealed. And that's a good measure to take. That said, in most batten style tile installations, installers opt toward quality 3-coursing methods rather than having to do bibbing so they don't have to pry up the wood battens. So happens that this particular post exited the roof right between 2 tiles, so we just use a diamond blade on a grinder to cut that hole between the 2 tiles before installing the flashing. And there is that discussion of, gee, should the tile level flashing be on top of the tile as pictured on the left-hand image, or positioned below the tile? Well, below the tile is certainly an option. It's more work. As you can see, you got to cut each tile. It does make it less visible, particularly if you paint the tile level flashing as you see pictured in the right-hand image. Both approaches are permissible. I'm a strong proponent of the approach on the left because it's easier and I feel it looks good. And if you want to paint the visible flashing that you see exposed, just get some spray paint and away you go. The last option I'll show to adapt for a tile roof is a little bit interesting because it doesn't involve a tile roof mount. It involves a standard asphalt shingle roof mount like our E-mount lag pictured on screen. And the approach is that you remove all the tile, you install a new asphalt shingle, you put the PV system in and tile around the perimeter. So that's a good image here. We refer to this procedure as strip and go. Here's some images of roofs that have precisely that configuration. This is before the tile go into place. Note that on the other side of the ridge of the PV system that's about to be installed, you've got all your tiles stacked up there. Here is that same installation after the tile's put back into place. Now, realize that tile doesn't go all the way under the PV array. It just goes about 6 inches, maybe as much as 12 inches under the array, but it looks like you've got tile under this array. You just can't tell. Here's a great photo showing how the tile is only overlapping the modules, or underlapping them, I guess you would say, by about 6 inches. So this is a really clean solution. The beauty is you get a new asphalt shingle roof. You can use cost-effective asphalt shingle roof mounts like our L-mount or our E-mount. And the roof under the array is going to last the life of the array. If you have to re-roof the rest of the roof, you may have only asphalt shingled under the array here, which is a great strategy. Here's another in picture framed or inset system before the PV modules go in with the tile. And one more photo for good measure showing again the PV array before the tiles go into place, or the modules. And here's one more. So tile repairs, there's information in the Tile Roofing Institute showing where adhesive will go to secure the tile back into place. If you have direct attached tile, you cannot nail a tile back in, and there's no batten to hook it on, so you must adhere it back into place. Just check the Tile Roofing Institute manual, which is a free download, to see where the proper locations are to apply the adhesive to not impair the water shedding capability of the tile. Now, in direct attached tile country, you can also use these clever tile fastening clips. You can get them from a company called Stormlock Tile Fastener, previously known as Newport Tile Fasteners, at the link shown on screen. And they've got a interesting variety of tile fasteners that can be adapted to a direct attached tile roof after you've removed a tile to install a mount, and then you can use these types of clips to secure the tile back into place rather than having to adhere it in place. You'll always want to protect the roof right where your ladder entry point is, because that's where tile get damaged the most. Always walk carefully on the lower edge of the tile. Replace the broken tiles that you can find at the tile yard. And dog ear brakes, he says, can be repaired with tile adhesive. I just think that that's not a suitable approach long term, because as most people know, gluing concrete back together don't work too good. The tile conduit penetration flashing offers an 18 by 18 flashing for the tile level with a rubber collar that can be adapted to a 1/2, 3/4, or 1 inch diameter conduit. We also have the deck level flashing with another with another seal that would work well. And our conduit mount, our conduit mount for tile is clever because it just hooks onto the top of the tile, hooks onto the bottom with a bolt, and then your conduit clamp bolts to that. Just a few glamour pictures of my tile roof job as it was going in. I had to re-roof the whole thing. The underlayment after 16 years was in pretty rough condition. Notice that the southeast, or this is a section of the southwest facing roof that hadn't yet started leaking, but you can see that the asphalt has been baked out of this felt paper and it looks more like paper than felt paper right now. And you can just tell that it's not long away from dying. The southeast facing roof again was curling at the bottom edge noticeably. This is an indicator of advanced underlayment where, and in my opinion, if you go to install PV on a roof like this, it is really irresponsible to not replace that underlayment before the PV system gets installed. Here's another picture of my worn out underlayment after 16 years. The northeast facing roof surface was the least damaged, but you can still see there at the rake of the roof, the gable end of this particular roof, there was the felt paper again was dry. It was curling at the eave there, so it wasn't in bad condition, but it probably wouldn't lasted more than about 5 years. This is the water tracking down my deck, and in the old days they used to use these illogical foam wedges at the eave of the roof to space the first row of tile off the roof. That was the eave riser strategy. Unfortunately, it impeded efficient water draining off the roof, so that was discontinued in 2006. There's another piece of that dumb foam wedge that causes a lot of problems. And in my southwest facing roof over my garage, which was in the worst condition, you can see it when we took the tile off. Here's after they stepped through the rotted section of sheathing. And this is the underlayment being torn off. You can see again that the OSB decking is just rotted through because it was leaking, and decking after time will fail. My ridge beam had some old underlayment that was showing advanced deterioration at the ridge. So the ridge beams were still usable, but they were replaced with new underlayment over them and weather blocking. This was one of the flashings with nails that was causing a leak problem in my roof here. And the fascia was pretty badly rotted, unfortunately. Here's the fascia being removed, and you can see the rot that was occurring in the desert where we only get about 8 inches of rain a year on average. So we replaced several sections of the deck with plywood, put this 90-pound rolled roofing, mineral coated rolled roofing over as an underlayment, and then the True Flow drain through battens. This is the tile before they got put back on, and then I used a proper vented eave riser to space the front row of tile up from the roof rather than that dumb foam wedge that caused leak problems. And then I used a bunch of O'Hagan vents to bring air into the attic to ventilate my roof and lower my air conditioning bills. And then we used these form-fitting plastic pieces called weather blocking that seal the water out of the roof at the ridge area. That, again, a much improved situation. Put the rails on, all the flashed mounts were going in here. You can see the upper row is already 3-course sealed to the underlayment. And then when the tile is trimmed, the hook sits in place and it looks really nice. And these are the tile hooks. You can see in that lower right part of the image, the tile hook comes real close to the O'Hagan vent. So you can still get them to work in vent areas because of that sideways sliding capability. And this is what the rails look like before the modules went on. And then the beauty shots of the finished PV array. It's a really attractive system overall. So that said, we have wrapped up all of our material. I'll take any questions that you folks may have, but just want to remind you, we've got a roof attachment for just about every roof type, from shingles to shake, slate, metal, shingle, tile, low slope roofs. Our L-mount is now available, the economical way to mount solar on asphalt shingle roofs, still providing an elevated water seal. Our flashings have all gone to rounded corners on the 9x12 sizes with those convenient alignment guide notches, like our updated classic conduit mount pictured on screen. We also have our E-mount with that clever seal design that's housed in that rectangular block. This is by far, in my opinion, the most robust waterproofing seal in asphalt shingles. Our universal accessory frame bracket will attach any kind of module level power electronic device to your PV module frame in a UL 2703 recognized listed bonded and grounding bracket that will adapt to most modules. Our tile replacement mount, we spend enough time talking about here. Our tile replacement flashing is now available and is the cost-effective way to manage tile on a roof. Keep in mind, this is a great solution because you can carry stacks of these things in your truck. They're lightweight and you don't have to carry a bunch of replacement tile. And this has flexibility to fit a broad range of different shapes of tile. So it's a great solution that fits flat S and W tile. Our conduit penetration flashings and conduit mounts are available, as is our quick rack rail free system for asphalt shingle roofs. Check our website for more information. While you're there, click a green free sample button to get the product that you're interested in. And don't forget to check out our Solar Roof Talk podcast by Googling the search term Solar Roof Talk, where you can learn about the new relaxed fire setbacks and pathways that are coming into play in California in July. Our training van is in California as we speak, so if you're out in the West Coast and want to stop by your place of business, call our sales department and they can tell you when it will be in your area. You can email me at the email address shown on screen, jeff.spies, spelled like spies, at quickmountpv.com, or you can check our website for frequently asked questions, complete product info, engineering documentation, training downloads, trade show events, list of our distributors, and get your free sample by clicking the green button. The events we're going to be at, we will be at the COSIA conference in Aurora, Colorado in March. And my favorite technical event of the year, the NABCEP conference this year in Niagara Falls, is going to be a wonderful educational event. The Midwest Renewable Energy Fair in Custer, Wisconsin's my personal favorite. Intersolar and Solar Power International are two of the biggest events of the year. All these are really fun, so I hope that you'll come visit us at one of those events. And if you have more information or interest in more information on any of our products and learning more about how to install them, check our website for all of our training resources, including in-person training classes at our corporate headquarters in Northern California. You will get one NABCEP credit if you participated for the full hour, and it will be emailed in 1 to 2 weeks with links to download this presentation. Please provide feedback. We do read it, and I will take any questions that you folks have, starting with, let's see here, we've got something from Perry that says, incredibly thorough. Do you recommend polyurethane sealant or topping over nail heads or other minor openings? Perry, from a sealant perspective, the sealant that I advocate when you've got a asphaltic impregnated felt paper underlayment is a mastic with rubberizing agents. Now, there's a whole bunch of different types of mastic, but it's pretty straightforward. If you go to Home Depot, Henry is the #1 mastic that they tend to sell, at least out here in the West. And they have 3 grades that are one's the lowest price, medium, and high. The medium price one is the one I use. It has rubberizing agents. The most expensive one is formulated with additional rubberizing agents to stand up to direct UV exposure, but the vast majority of our products are installed under the tile where there's no direct UV exposure, so that's the style I use for my roof. Riley asks, with getting your PV to the roof, do you just use a double flashing, or what would you recommend? Well, Riley, I used the quick hook, and as such, there was no need for a tile level flashing. I just used the underlayment flashing as we saw pictured. In fact, I'll just really quickly scroll back to that slide to show you the image of Carlos doing some work on my tile roof here. Let's see if I can quickly find that. Let's see, where are you, Carlos? This is the picture up. Here we go. So this is my roof. So what I did is I had the quick hook with the included flashing that we sealed to the roof using a 3-course method. You can see that's the granulated rolled roofing, mineral surface rolled roofing material underlayment. And then we put the mastic down on that with that reinforcing fiber mesh, and then finishing up with a final layer of mastic. So that's what, whenever you're dealing with sealing on asphaltic underlayments, a mastic is the preferred sealant. And you don't have to use a tile level flashing, because when you're done, the tile will fit right over the top of the hook as you see pictured here, so that we don't cut through the top of the tile, and there's no need to use a tile level flashing. Ryan says, I'm currently working on a 100 kilowatt installation in Florida. We're mounting the system with the tile replacement flashings and flat tile bases. Awesome, Ryan. He says, when removing the concrete mortar, what should be used in its place? Well, there shouldn't be anything, technically speaking, and this is a little bit of an interesting development because we're seeing more of this go on in Florida as we speak, with the solar installation industry growing there. And in the old days, going back 20 years, tiles, when they were fully adhered to the underlayment, most often a 90-pound mineral coated rolled roofing like I have on my roof, you would see a concrete mortar that would glue the tiles directly down to the underlayment. So in order to work on those, you'd have to first get the tile out. Sometimes you might have to break it. Other times you can kind of pry it out of the concrete it's set into and work it out, ideally saving it without breaking it. And then you'd have to remove the concrete from the underlayment, which can be tricky. So what I would state is there may be, there's, you know, in more recent roof construction in Florida, the concrete adhesive for the tile has been replaced with a polyurethane foam, like an expanding foam. And that's easier because you just scrape that foam off. But if you've got concrete, you'll have to carefully remove it as best possible without trying to damage the underlayment underneath. And then you can 3-course seal the flashing down to that underlayment after that concrete's been removed. Ryan asks, what's the best adhesive to repair concrete tile cracks? There is no good one, Ryan. That's the fundamental reality of it. When a concrete tile cracks, you should replace it. And then finally, Ryan says, when removing some of the tiles around plumbing stacks and vents, we have noticed water damage around the vents. Oy, yikes. What's the most cost-efficient way to prevent this from happening? Well, Ryan, that is the how shall I say, there's no easy, so that's straight up roofing work. You have to have a roofer come in to properly flash that penetration. If you have water damage around a pipe penetration, it's likely that the flashing solution was not done properly, and that would be the domain of a roofer. So, and Ryan, unfortunately, because of the format of the webinars, we can't turn on the audience microphones, but that's the last comment or question I see from folks. And with that, what I'll do is just figure to wrap it up. I'd like to thank everybody for their participation today. And I'll stick around if there's any last minute questions, but we hope some of you might be able to join us for our webinar in another hour and 15 minutes on roofing codes and standards. It's a 90-minute webinar where we go into more detail about what the Tile Roofing Institute requires, what is required for asphalt shingles, how you comply with codes and standards, fire setbacks, all that exciting stuff. So hope some of you can join in, and hope you all found this to be of use today, and look forward to seeing many of you at future training events or in future webinars. And stop by our trade show if you come to any this year and introduce yourself, say hi, and thanks so much for your participation today. Hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful upcoming weekend, and don't forget to join us in an hour and 15 minutes for our presentation on solar roofing codes and standards. Ryan has one last comment. He says, do I have a direct line? I have a quick question. Yeah, Ryan, probably best because I've got just a limited time between the webinars. If you can email me, I'd be happy to call you back once I have some free time, either late today or sometime tomorrow. So I'll go back to my email address just so that you have that handy. It's there we go. There, I just passed it. So my email is Jeff, Jeff. My last name spelled like spies at quickmountpv.com. Just shoot me over your question. As soon as I have a few minutes, I'll give you a call to answer whatever other questions you may have. So again, thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see some of you in an hour and 15 minutes for solar roofing codes and standards. Adios.